All right, everyone that's here and all of you online, I appreciate you being online, and I understand why you're Zooming in today because of the weather. So we hope maybe to get you out of here a little earlier too, so that you can be safe on the highway getting home, and it's going to be darker. So anyway, we appreciate you being here, weathering the weather, so to speak, and we hope that next month it will be a little easier on everyone to get here. And our meeting that month for February is the 16th. So this one was a little earlier in the month, and next month's is a little earlier in the month. We're trying to get it on the 3rd or 4th Sunday of the month is what we're trying to do this year. I have calendars. If you did not print one out, I did send everyone a calendar of events, and it even has the speaker. It doesn't say whether they're Zooming in or not. Most of them this year will be Zooming in. Our speaker today is from Topeka, Kansas. So she, of course, is Zooming in. Next month, however, all that being said, next month we have Candy Drake, and she's a local, and she'll be here. So I want to say that, I can't tell you exactly if they're going to make it. I always offer them a room, a place to stay. And if they can come for the weekend, they can stay with me. And so sometimes they take me up on it. And we've developed beautiful friendships because of that. That's what Peggy did the month of December. So anyway, I'm glad you're here. If you can't join us live, then get on Zoom. And we're trying to make it easier and easier for you. We have a brand new website that works beautifully. It works beautifully on my phone as well as the computer. And there you have all the information, the calendar, you have information about the speaker for this month, that month. So please refer to that. And please help us promote this website by sending it to your friends that you think might want to be a member or friends of our group. I say member, but we don't charge anything. This is all donation based. And so it's not a charge, but you're a friend of ours, friend of Space Coast IANDS. Speaking of our new website, I always want you to try and go to IANDS.org. They've got a world of information. IANDS is getting ready to kind of make a change. A new mission statement should be coming out this year. So stay on top of that if you can. And there's so many videos there that you can tap into. So try and do that. Go to IANDS.org. Every month, try to go to Space Coast IANDS and view it and see what's going on. That's how we're going to be trying to reach you the most. I do send out a lot of emails, and I'm trying to keep them down to like 3. One email that introduces the speaker, one email that sends out the Zoom link, and then a 3rd email that just reminds you. So I send out 3 emails, but I still am getting, I know y'all all get a lot of emails, and they may be going to your spam. So check that out too. So, but every single meeting, I get someone that says, I don't have the Zoom link. And we're hoping to put that on the website each month. I'm going to talk with Serena about that. She's done so much hard work that I hate to ask any more of her. Speaking of hard work, Janelle and her family, Garrison and father, all worked on getting an inventory of all of our books. And we now have 6 boxes of books, wonderful resources. And Janelle and her family got them all inventoried. And now we're going to be working on how do we keep certain books in the same box and make it easy for you just to pull the card out of the book, sign it, and put it into the envelope on the outside. And then when you come back, you'll know to go back to that box, get that card, put it back in, put it in your book, and put it away, just like you do kind of at the library. But we need to probably get these put into boxes by the author's last name, like libraries do. But right now, I have a list of all the wonderful books that we are accumulating. And I try to buy a couple of each of our speakers' books. And I'll show you those two books that I have in just a minute when I introduce Esther. We always give a participation gift for you just coming and being here and helping promote this organization. So I'm going to let you run over there and draw the lucky number. And that purple bag is the winner. And that just takes a second. It's a little gift. He's going to call out the last few numbers, or he can call it all out.
Yeah. 537.
537. Garrison. All right. That's his little gift. We're glad you made it. Again, I think I mentioned that Candy Drake is going to be here on February 16th. Don't get that mixed up with thinking it's going to be the following week. Now, I want to give Esther as much time because I'll tell you, she is a special angel in my life. She's going to maybe talk about angels today, but she has been just a wonderful person to talk with and get to know. And she's got a lot of titles. She's been a writer. She is a writer. She's written and published like 22 books, 23, 24 books. She might correct me on that. And she has helped produce shows, TV shows, and she's a speaker. And she's had so many titles, but I think the one true title that she would say she loves the most is being a mom. And she's been a mom to 2 children that I know of, but I think she's had 6. So I maybe let her talk about that more. But I know that one of her sons was very influential in getting this book published, Dear Dean, Love Mom. And it's a great read. And I hope everyone gets a chance to read this. And then she came out with Between Heaven and Earth. It's similar to this. It's kind of a different cover for it of the same story. But the other thing she does is she does mystery writing. So she has gone into mystery murder books too. So her website is chock full of all these different books. And then she has a Sunday, every Sunday she has a talk show. So it's a podcast that she created. So she's an incredible, incredible woman, has had a wonderful journey, and she has so much wisdom to share with us. And I just want to give her as much time now as she needs and wants. And then if y'all may have some questions for her. I hope you read her bio. It was very long, but that's because she's had a long journey. I don't want to tell her age, but I bet she'll brag about it. It seems like when you get my age and older, if you get 60 and older, you're no longer just 60, you're 60 and a half, or you're 70 and 70 and a half. It's kind of like my little 2-year-olds. They're not 2 anymore. They tell me they're 2 and a half. Yeah. So you brag about your age when you're really young, and when you're a little older, you brag about your age because we've earned it, right? So anyway, Esther, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah. That's probably not the finest introduction you've ever had in your life, but I hope that you'll fill in everywhere that I left off.
Well, that was very gracious of you. You know, sometimes when somebody introduces me, I often wonder if that isn't the best part of the program. I don't know how I can top what you said, or if I can even live up to it. Did you have more? I'm sorry. Did I interrupt?
I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you working so hard yesterday. She had some computer issues and her mic wasn't working. So she worked with a great tech. He's probably what she considers an angel now too, but he helped her, and then another guy helped her. And so we had a little bit of a glitch this afternoon, but we got on, and I say, I'm so happy. So go ahead, Esther, I'm going to let you take the floor now, honey.
Well, thank you, Deb. That's really sweet of you. You know, the first time I spoke to you guys was in the big library, in Virginia Beach. And everybody was so wonderful there. There's a glow about people who believe as you fellas believe, as you guys believe. And you're just across the board, just some of the nicest people I've ever met. Really appreciate being invited to talk. What I'm going to talk about today isn't one of my standard talks. When you've been speaking for about 30 years, you have some pretty pat programs. But when you said talk about angels, I realized that, like in Dear Dean Love Mom, in my book about my journey after my son's death, and as you know, the way he returned to me, fully three-dimensional, after his death, to tell me that life and love are eternal. Go out and tell him, Mom. Well, in that book, I refer to incidents that involved angels. Then I realized that even my mysteries, I somehow seem to pull on real life. And so you'll end up finding my angels scattered across everything I've done. But I really never sat down and said, okay, let's just talk about angels today. So I'm going to be as surprised as you at whatever I say. I'll hear it the same time you do. There was something I was going to add to what I know I was going to say. Please excuse me if it sounds boastful, but you were talking about some of the things I've done. And I'm thinking about what you might enjoy. And the last screenplay that I was hired to write was called Tayada. And I understand it is now available on the internet. And I believe it's free somewhere if you'll just Google in Teata. It's a true story of a Chickasaw Indian woman who is just remarkable. I'd said I wasn't going to write anymore for Hollywood because I don't respect Hollywood. I don't like what they're doing. I don't want to be a part of it. But when they asked me to write Tayana, I did some research on her, and then I said, okay. So I hope you all will enjoy that story. Okay, angels. Well, my mom and dad traveled. I think we started traveling when I was 3 months old, but they'd been traveling long before I came around. So most of my early life was spent, well, my very early life on, that little shelf that's under the back window in the car.
Yeah.
Mama would make that up with sweet smelling like sheets and things and little pillows. And so that's when Dad liked to get started traveling before the sun came up, before it got hot. So I would be tucked in under that little place under the window when the last star of the night would begin to fade. And as sunrise would start to color the sky, tears would roll down my little face. And I would say to myself, why do I have to be here? I want to be there with you. I miss you. Don't make me be here. I don't know those people. Those are my very first recollections of having intense conversations every morning when that little star was starting to fade. Now, I didn't know who I missed. I didn't know, I'd never heard about God or Jesus or angels. I just knew, and I couldn't name it for many, many years, but I come to recognize the feeling I had as homesickness. And when I said I missed you, I really did. That may bore the dickens out of you, but it kind of interests me because I've always felt that children are so close to the source. They're so, I think they see things that we don't see because after a while we get conditioned to earth. But I believe little children left, if you don't influence them, make them think, no, you don't see that. Like in my case, nobody said you don't see that because I never talked to anybody about what I was thinking, and I do have my phone on mute, believe me, but I'm going to fix that right now and mute it again. Um, so I think children probably see angels. I've always suspected that. Let me go back to my grandma lived in Tampa, Florida. And up until I was about 7 years old, we visited her and my grandpa regularly. And grandma had a feather bed. And I loved to climb up on her feather bed. Well, there was a sofa along the wall over on the left side where Mama and Grandma always talked on the sofa. And I climbed up into that feather bed and I played in her button box. Now, Grandpa always sat in a rocking chair at the foot of the feather bed, and it was angled so that it faced the sofa. He never really talked to anybody, but I adored him because he was tall. He had black hair with little white in his sideburns, and he always had on the same thing, a white shirt, black bow tie, black sweater, and black trousers. So regal. And I would be playing in the button box, and I'd look up and he'd be smiling at me, just a little twinkle in his eye and a little smile on his lips. And I'd get so shy because I just adored him. So I never remembered him talking, but I remember him, of course. I remember at the dining room table, or actually it was the table because it was in the kitchen. So it's not a dining room table. Anyway, I remember him there. I was 65 years old when I was in California visiting my aunt. And I said to her, now that was my great grandpa, so that was her grandpa. And I said to her how much I loved my grandma. And I said, but I loved grandpa just a teensy bit more, but I never can remember him talking. And you know what my aunt said? She said, well, I guess not. He died years before you were ever born. Okay. How about that? That was the first clue I had that he wasn't as real as mom and grandma. So was he an angel? What did he come back because he left my grandma? So just to be there, just to be with her. What is the purpose of an angel? And does that qualify as an angel? I'd really love to hear what you all have to say about that, if you think that's an angel. But I always thought he was grandma's angel. He wasn't there for me. He was there for grandma. So that was my first encounter, but I didn't realize it for 65 years.
It's amazing.
If you want to hop over now, try not to bore you too much with this. I have 6 if you want to tick them off and say, when is this woman going to stop talking? I have 6 angel encounters I want to tell you about, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. I was 19 years old, and I was back in Tampa. I've been lots of places in between visiting grandma and when I was 19 in Tampa. I had been in Texas, St. August, where was I? San Antonio. I lived in Texas 2 or 3 places, but at that time I was in San Antonio. And I had just come back to Tampa. And I had walked over, it was a couple of 3 miles, past a place called Tarpon Spring, Sulphur Springs, where a friend lived. I hadn't seen her in months and months because I'd been gone. We visited a while, and as I left, and this sounds like, why is she telling us this? But it hooks up. There's a reason. Bear with me here. When I stepped out of her door, I went into her house was one of those that sits sideways on a lot. So I'm walking down the gravel drive or getting ready to. And she leans out the door and says something about, I'll tell Smitty you stopped by. And I said, yeah, I'll tell him. I said, hi. And she said, are you going back to Texas? And I said, nope, I'm here now. And she said, okay, see you later. And I walked on. Now, there was a mailbox out front, that also had their initials and the word Smitty in quotation marks on it. Across the street was just a gigantic tree, and I didn't see a car parked there because it was so very dark. It was not a street that had street lights, incidentally. So as I walked out to turn left to start walking home about 2 or 3 miles, somebody called from under that tree and said, Esther. Now, I left out the fact that my friend had said, see you later, Esther. She had to use my name. But I didn't put that together. Somebody said, hey, Esther, under that tree. Well, because they said my name, I did not connect it with her having just said my name. I just assumed it was somebody I knew because I'd lived many years off and on in Tampa, and I knew quite a few people there. So I stupidly walked over into the shadows where there was a car parked and a man behind the wheel. Of course, very dark. And I said, hi. And he said, so when'd you get back from Texas? Again, that substantiated that this is somebody I know. So I said a couple of days ago, and he said, is Smitty home? And I said, no, but I think he'll be in a couple of hours. I just can't wait though. And he said, well, where are you living? And I said, oh, across Sulphur Springs on the other side. He said, oh, that's where I was headed. Let me give you a ride. Well, I might not have been smart enough to figure that he got everything, the information from what she just said. I was smart enough to know not to get in the car if I don't recognize him. And I said, no, thank you. I'd like to walk. So I started walking, and he began following me, pulling just alongside me, creeping along, saying, well, this is ridiculous. If I'm going the same direction you're going and you're walking and it's 10 o'clock at night, I really think you should let me give you a ride. And I said, no, thank you. And this went on for about a block or so. And then he started laughing. And he said, am I going to be following you along the curb here all the way to wherever you're going on the other side of Sulphur Springs? Bottom line is that I did start to feel silly. Obviously, he knew Smitty. He knew my name. He knew I'd been in Texas. And wasn't I being absurd to walk along and talk to him, creeping along there at the curb? So I finally laughed and I said, okay, so I got in. Deb, at 19, I don't think your brain has completely developed. I really don't. At least mine hadn't. So now I think he's going to take me home, which is straight down the boulevard over a bridge, and then I live right over there. As we got to a place where you go over the bridge or you turn to the right and you're headed toward the highway, he turned to the right. And I said, no, no, no. I live straight ahead across the bridge. And he said, I just realized I am driving without my driver's license, and I'm not comfortable with that. He said, would you mind terribly if I stop by my place? Let me just grab my billfold. Well, yes, I did mind. And what are you going to say, though? He's driving, and we're now out on, in those days, a highway was really a 2-lane road, and it wasn't, like we have the interstate today at all. There was no other traffic out there, and it was pitch black and on woods on either side as far as you could see. So I'm not liking this at all. But he said, I'm really sorry. Just let me grab this and I'll take you right home. So I quit talking, and I'm trying to decide how to get out of this situation, because now I'm really beginning to wonder, is this somebody I know? And I'm starting to think back of what my friend Elizabeth has said at the door, and I'm really concerned. Anyway, now we are going along this pitch black road, and every now and then there'll be a turn, but it's onto like a rutted road, like a tractor would go through those 2-lane rutted roads, not asphalt or anything. And we'd see those every few, oh, not yards, but half mile apart or so. And those roads would go into the woods. Like people live there in trailers or whatever they do. Anyway, We passed several of those, and then he turned off on one. Now that means you're turning off of this dark, dark highway. You are now going into the thickest woods that you can imagine. In Florida, when you're talking woods, you're talking wild boars, you're talking rattlesnakes and alligators, and you cross a ditch, which the little road takes you across the ditch, which is the alligators and snakes, trust me. Now you're going on this rutted road, and there is nothing ahead but woods. And I'm trying to think how I can open my door and run. Where are you going to run? You're in the woods. Am I going to run back across Crocodile Valley there and go down the highway? He's going to catch me. I've got nowhere to run. So I'm really debating. He makes a turn off into a clearing. And I put my hand on the door because I think when he stops, I'm going to open it and I'm going to take my chances and run. He pulls up into the clearing where there's an old trailer just parked there under the trees, but at the edge of the small clearing. He says, I'll be right back. And he gets out. Now I've got my hand on the door. I can run. But I ride back to where am I going to run? Now I'm in the woods. Now I'm going to face wild boars and all the other things that live out in Florida swamps at that time. That's what it amounts to, swamps and woods. And you don't really know when you're going to run into quicksand. That's a very real possibility. Fortunately, he came out of the trailer and he had a billfold and he got in the car and he said, sorry about that. And he backed out and we continued down the highway, but he turned the wrong direction. He turned to the right, which took us further down the highway and not back towards Sulphur Springs. And I'm very worried. And I said, things like, I really want to go home now. And he starts telling me about his life. He was a stunt driver at one time. He had a horrible accident and was in the hospital for a long time, had a plate in his head. And the more he talked, the more I realized there was something dangerously wrong with him. Finally, we get to a turnoff again where you go through the woods and you come out on the other end into a gravel pit. And it's huge, huge, huge gravel pit, several acres of gravel pit. Off in the distance, beyond the gravel pit, I can see lights of what looks like a housing development. But I don't know what's in the dark space between those lights and the gravel pit because it's quite a distance. There could be a lake, there could be a river, there could be no telling what, but whatever it was very low. And I didn't know if there was a lake, would there be a bridge over? I have no idea. From the edge of the gravel pit to the lights, what was in there is just pitch black. He pulled off into that. And when he did, by then I knew that I was in trouble. I did jump out. I was going to take my chances and try to run toward those lights. And I running across the gravel and I kicked off my shoe and ran across the gravel. He tackled me from behind and grabbed me by my ankles and I landed on my face on the gravel and he pulled me back by my ankles and pulled me back my side where, the passenger door was open. It was still open, but he dragged me over to the driver's side where the door was open. And he stood me up and of course I'm all discombobulated and he turned me toward how old cars used to have bench seats. So that's what it had. And he turned me toward that and he socked me on my jaw. And I fell back onto the bench seat. When I did, he opened a switchblade knife and he sort of landed, not exactly on me, he's kind of up on his knees, but he put the switchblade knife here. I had fallen so far back on the bench seat that my head was out where I could see stars. I was out the door. The door was open. And although he had a switchblade knife at my throat, under my chin, and he was saying what all he was going to do to me, I really didn't hear him because I was so awed by those stars. There were like billions of stars, and they were so small and they twinkled, and they were just incredible. I'd never seen anything like the bowl turned over just full of stars. And that's all I could see. And I knew he was there, but he wasn't bothering me. He was just talking and knife at my throat. I saw in that moment the headlines on the next day's Tampa Tribune. I saw it as clearly as if it were in front of me, and it said, "Girl slain in gravel pit." And I knew that was tomorrow's headline. It didn't scare me. I was surprised that it was so clear and that I knew what it was. But in that same moment, from those stars, I heard what sounded like little glass bells. And I knew they were angel voices. And they sang, "Peace, be still, tell him you love him." And they sang it sweetly over and over again, as if it were just coming out on bells being stirred by a breeze. And they were coming from all those beautiful twinkly stars. Well, I just stopped and I looked at his name was Charlie, he said. And I put my hands on the side of his face. And I said, "I love you, Charlie." And he said, "What?" And I said, "I love you, Charlie." He said, "You love Charlie?" I said, "Yes, I love Charlie." He scrambled to get his knees on the floorboard, and he puts the knife away, and he had torn at the top of my dress. It had a little boat neck and it buttoned down the front. He pulled at it and it had ripped a bit. And he was putting it back together. And he said, "Do you know what Charlie was going to do to you?" And I said, "It's all right. It's all right. You're okay." And he couldn't get over. He said, "You love Charlie?" I said, "Yes." He said, "You be Charlie's girl?" "Oh, yeah, indeed." I said, "Yeah. Forgive me, God, I lied." I said, "Yes." So he got back uh, in front of the steering wheel and he started the car. He said, "Charlie's got to take you home." And I said, "Thank you." Well, I thought, if I'm going to be his girl, I better sit close to him. I don't want to change in his mind. And I still heard the angels saying, "Peace, be still, tell him you love him." And so I sat close to him, and he asked me several times, "Why would you love Charlie?" And I said, "Because you're God's child. You're a good person, really." I talked to him all the way until he dropped me off at my house, apologizing again. Fortunately, I was living with two other girls, and our landlord was the sheriff. So that's the first place I went. But a host of angels actually saved me. There's no way I could have gotten out of that situation by myself. And to see the headline and to hear the angel voices tell me exactly how to handle that, I just think that's incredible. I don't know if you've ever had an experience like that. I've never had another one quite like that, but I would love to hear yours if you've had it. Funny thing is, my roommates didn't believe me. Uh, I don't know I don't know where they thought I went, and they could see that I was, my dress certainly wasn't all neat and clean. Um, he didn't hurt me in any way. Well, he socked me on the jaw. That wasn't real pleasant, but I really wasn't damaged in any way. So for some reason they didn't believe me, but my landlord did. And when Charlie showed up the next night, what Charlie had said, "Will you go to the movies with me tomorrow night?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I'll pick you up at 7. So at 7 o'clock, the sheriff was waiting for him. And I think Charlie got returned to a mental institution. I think he had escaped from a mental hospital, they said. and he ended up back there. So in some ways, I never thought about this till this very moment. But I thought, well, wasn't that a blessing for Charlie and for everybody else? Because Charlie obviously needed to be back in the hospital. I had never thought about that before. So I really never told anybody that story, not one soul, until I think just a few years ago. I mentioned it to somebody, and then I talked about it again. Deb mentioned that I have a YouTube channel. It's called Esther Luttrell Sunday Stories. And I have one of my friends, Jack Diamond, and I talk about angelic encounters. So if you'd like to go to Esther Luttrell Sunday Stories on YouTube, you might enjoy what Jack has to say about angels. And I do cover that story again, though, so you might be bored. When I was Debbie, now rescue your friends if I'm babbling on and I start to bore you out of your tree. Divert me if that happens, please.
Well, I just want to interject here for just a
Yes,
second.
yes.
The way you tell a story is so much like my friend Lynn. Uh, Lynn helped me start this organization, and without her and all her many stories that she told, we wouldn't be sitting here today. And so she was also from Tampa, and she had an experience there in Tampa, similar at about the same age as you. So for me, it's kind of like listening to Lynn tell a story, but it's so great that your generation, you are storytellers. And that's what I love about your generation, and maybe back even 60s and 70 and 80-year-old people. We do like stories and we like to tell them. And I hope that doesn't die out. I really do. So thank you for telling your story. They're very interesting to me. They're very interesting.
I hope somebody else is. You're still there, everybody?
Yes, they're all here. They're all awake. They're all, listening intently.
That's good. That's the reason I started Sunday Stories, was because as a little girl, I loved to sit around the Sunday table, and the adults, while they're having their dessert, would start telling stories. And I was just fascinated by everything they said. Even when it was boring, I was fascinated. So I started Sunday Stories to hope that people who are tired of blood and guts and all of the violence on television and the nonsense that's coming out in Hollywood, I hope that there's somebody out there who just wants to hear a story,
Right.
and all kinds of stories. So go there and enjoy a story, I hope. But I was going to pop over to when I was pregnant with my son, Todd. Um, he was due literally any minute when my husband and I were going to go with his mother, my mother-in-law, to a Bible study at a church in a nearby town. It was about 20 miles away. And we were spending the weekend with my mother and mother-in-law. And she asked me, she said, I have to go over and set up for the Bible study. Would you mind terribly picking up my two friends? They're going to be in the parking lot at the church, and bring them over to the church where we're having Bible study. And I said, no, I'll be glad to. So she goes on, and when it's time for me to waddle over, actually, I stopped by her church in town, the Baptist church there, and there are two elderly women standing there, and they get in the back seat, but there's also a younger woman, and she has with her a little boy that was maybe two and a half. And so she got in the front seat with me. And off we go for our 20-mile jaunt over to the church that's holding the Bible study this day. As we're driving along, I don't remember anything except, special about our conversation, except her saying, I'm sure she asked me when the baby was due, and I'm sure I said, any minute now. Um, Somehow in there, she worked in that she had had a son, another son, other than the one with her. Her first child had died of crib death. And I said, oh my goodness, I would never have the strength to get through something like that. And she said, yes, you would. And I said, oh no, no way, that mm-mm. So anyway, we go on to Bible class, and we're there. It's about a 4 hour thing. And then I take the women, meet me out, in the parking lot again. They get in the back seat, and the lady gets in the front seat with her little boy again. And we go back to the Grandview Church parking lot where everybody gets out. Well, as she starts to get out, she turns around and she hands me a slip of paper. And she said, we were living in Salina, Kansas. So we were just in Grandview, Missouri to visit my mother-in-law and father-in-law. She said, if you get back to town, here's my address. Please stop by and say hello. And so I took it and I said, thank you. I sure will. So everybody goes away. We go to Salina now, and I have Todd. I have my little boy. My little boy got to be 3 months old, and just the sweetest little thing. Talk about an angel. He was so sweet. Well, I was going to go interview for a job. There was a position open for a disc jockey at a new station. And I had been a disc jockey, so I went to interview for that. My husband came home on his lunch hour to take me, and we had gotten a babysitter. First time we'd ever left Todd. I'd never had a babysitter for him before, but someone recommended this lady, said she was a grandmotherly person. So I went for my interview, and then Don brings me home. And as I come in the house, Don and I came in the house, the babysitter said, oh, what a darling little boy you have. What a great disposition. He's just so full of smiles and laughs. I just gave him his lunch and I put him down for his nap. And I said, thank you. And she said, I would love to babysit with him again. Please call me. And I said, I sure will. Now, she and Don start out. He's going to take her home. I start into the bedroom. The crib was in our bedroom. As you get to the threshold, the door going into the bedroom, the crib was in the far corner on the right-hand side, and the end I could see was solid wood, so I couldn't see inside the crib. But I'll tell you what I did see. I wasn't even in the door. I was right at the door getting ready to step in, and I saw hands that looked like, let's see if I can show myself here, like this. They were together, in a prayerful position, but I knew they were reaching into the crib. And they started above the ceiling, came through the ceiling. I would say a good 15 feet. And were over the crib at an angle. I didn't see Todd. All I saw were those beautiful hands. They were luminous. They were like pearl, and they were luminous. And I knew they were God's hands. And I just turned around and I ran through the house and threw open the screen door. And Don was just pulling away. And I yelled, Don, Todd's dead. And man, he turned around and slammed to a stop at the curb and ran in the house and grabbed Todd up. And he was, if you've seen someone who's died, sort of a mottled blue, lack of oxygen, they turn blue. And Todd had died of crib death. So about 2 weeks later, we went back to his parents' house for a weekend. And I said to him, as soon as we got in the house, I said, you know what? I've still got this woman's address. I'm going to look for that lady that I brought over to the Bible study. I want to thank her for her words because I thought about it so many times, about her telling me about her little boy and crib death that I had never heard of before. I really didn't know what crib death was until she told me. And her saying, yes, you would have the strength. You would. And the way she said it was like she knew I was going to be facing this. And so I get in the car and off I go. And I know Grandview pretty well. So I knew that the address I had would be in town. And so I'm going down the main street. Well, it takes me over a railroad track. And if on the railroad track, there's nothing on either side but fields. There are no houses. There is an agricultural loading dock over on my right. And I think we're there on a Saturday or Sunday. There's nobody around. I didn't see people anywhere. So I'm driving along this country road it's become now, and there's no address like this on this sheet of paper. And as I turned back around, trying to retrace my steps, thinking I must have missed a shanty out here somewhere, I see a man on the loading dock. He's the only person around. So I pull up over there and I said, excuse me. And the man jumps down and comes over. And I said, do you know where this address could be? And I show him. He looks at it and he says, well, ma'am, that address would be in the middle of that cornfield. That's where the address would be. And I said, so there's no address like this? And he said, no, there are no houses out here for the next few miles. And I went back to my in-laws' house and I asked my mother-in-law, I said, you had me pick up your friends for Bible study. And I did. But who was the young lady? Was that somebody from the church? And she said, I thought it was a friend of yours. And I said, no. And she said, I never saw her before. So later I asked my mother-in-law to ask those two friends that we picked up if they had ever seen her before, and nobody had. And nobody ever saw her again. So we can only conclude from that that was indeed an angel who came to prepare me. And she really did. Her words I just thought about her so much when I was going through this. She made it. I will too. She said I would have the strength. She has the strength. I will. So there again, I think in the Bible, it even talks about angels taking on the appearance of people and being where they need to be. There's a common story, very common, of somebody being stranded on a highway and somebody coming along and helping them, and they turn around to thank them. There's no sign of the car. That's so common. I've heard that story from people that are sharing it with me. And I hate to tell them, well, that's a common story, but it really is. So there's my grandpa that looked three-dimensional. There are the angels singing from the stars and telling me, peace be still, telling me you love him. And here's this lady, just a nice, normal looking lady who has to be an angel. I don't understand what prompts them. At what point did they say, this lady Esther's going to need help. I'll take the form of a mother who has had a child die of crib death. I don't know how all of that begins, but it's interesting they're there when you need them. Uncalled for. You're not saying, oh God, please send me an angel. Not even in your frame of reference. But there they are when you need them. I find that amazing. Is it okay if I do another one? Everybody,
Yeah.
everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
I was going to speak somewhere. I think I was going to speak in Florida. And I was coming from the Midwest. By then I had moved to the Midwest. But I decided that there was no hurry to get back. So I'd make kind of a little adventure of it. I hadn't been on a train since I was about 18. So I decided that coming back, I would take the train. And for some reason, between the Midwest and Florida, I had to go to New York. As he, when I asked the ticket person why we're going to New York, he said, "Well, you're going where the rails are laid." So I guess that was the answer, but it didn't seem like the straightest route to me. Anyway, I thought this is going to be so fun. I'm going to go to New York and on the train. I'll go to a deli. I'll get off the train there. We had like a 3 hour uh, layover. Had to change trains there at Grand Central Station. And I was really excited about that. So anyway, I get on the train, and sure enough, I ended up at Grand Central Station. And I'm going to go now and look for a deli. And I had no idea where to do that, but Rockefeller Plaza came to mind. I don't know where that is, but I'd find my way. So they tell me I have to take such and such subway. And I had never been on a subway, never even seen a subway. So I follow directions and I end up at a subway. And they tell me now uh, where to get off. So I did everything I was told. I ended up going to a deli. It was exactly like I hoped it would be, a New York deli, and dozens and dozens of different languages there, and the pastrami sandwich. Well, I didn't eat that, but I saw one because I'm a vegetarian. But everything looked just like in the movies. So I had a great time. Now to get back to Grand Central Station, common sense tells me that all I have to do is retrace my steps. I just go back the same way I came in reverse. I step out and I'm disoriented. I can't figure out. This is before I had white hair and I was disoriented. I couldn't figure out, did I come in from the left or the right? Oh my gosh, which way? Now let me think. So I turn around and look at the door. Did I come this way or that way? So I think I came that way. So I start down the street. I ain't seeing nothing. It looks like a subway. So in Manhattan, there are booths out on the sidewalk where there's the woman sitting in the booth. Looks like a ticket office of some kind, only up on stilts. And people gather around and they yell directions. They want to know how to get here and there and here and there. And she yells out how to do it. So when I finally got a turn, I yelled, "Grand Central Station." And she says, "You go to subway A and you take it to subway C and change there to go to subway E and you'll be right back to Grand Central Station." So I take off. I'm going to go look for something that says subway A. But going down the street, I see it. I see the stairs down. I go down. I get on the subway. And she said, "Get off at C." I said, "I'm looking out the window. And as you go through this tunnel, you see the alphabet on the wall, and I'm looking for C." So I see it, and I guess you pull a string. I can't remember how we did that, but let them know this is where I get off, or maybe it stopped automatically. Anyway, I got off, and I was the only one that got off, and nobody got on. And now the subway pulls away, and I am in this dark, shadowy place with not another soul inside. Way, way off to my left is a little shaft of light coming down. So there's probably stairs that go there. But off here, that was to my left. To my right were three giant pillars, huge, huge pillars. And then it went around, the tunnel went around a curve and it's pitch black. And there's no light really to speak of. I mean, it's dim and dank. And I'm standing there and I said, "Okay, God, I'm totally lost. Time for a miracle." As I said, time for a miracle, I just happened to notice the third pillar down, right at where the tunnel turns and goes into pitch blackness. A man stepped out from behind the pillar. Now he stepped out, his back was to me, and I could see that he was well dressed. I could see that he was gigantic. He was huge. All I was thrilled that somebody was there, and I go running off toward him. I said, "Excuse me, mister." He turns around And if you've ever seen a huge linebacker in a football game, this is the biggest linebacker I've ever seen. I've actually met Rosie Greer, and he was bigger than Rosie Greer. He was a big man. He was a black man. He was, I would say, in his 40s. But here's what caught my attention. He had around his neck the biggest cross I have ever seen. I'm not kidding. I'm sure it was this long and this wide. And it was full of jewels and they sparkled beautifully. And he turned around and I'm still running toward him. Now all I'm seeing is that cross. So I'm saying, oh, thank you, God. How darling of you. You answered my prayer. Because that cross told me that all is well. And I run up to him and I said, oh, I'm so glad you're here. I am so lost. I'm trying to get back to Grand Central Station, and I thought I was to get off here at C, but I thought I was connect with an E, but I don't even, I don't have a clue. I'm lost. He said, no, you're fine. He said, there'll be another subway come by in just a moment. As he said it, another subway came. And he said, here you go. And the doors opened and I got on and he got on too. And we sat on one of those side seats, across from each other. And it was really crowded. So I kind of perched up, people jammed around me and he perched on the end with people jammed around him. We were both holding onto a pole. And I said, thank you. And he said, no problem. So I said, well, where do I go from here? And he said, just follow me, I'll show you. So the subway goes on, and just a few moments later, he says to me, you'll want to get off here. And I stood up then, and I turned to him and I said, thank you so much. And he said, that's quite all right. I said, I hope I didn't take you out of your way. And he smiled so big. And he said, not at all. So he kept sitting there, and he said, you'll see a sign with an arrow up a staircase, points up a staircase. And when you go up that staircase, you'll be in Grand Central Station. So I got off and I turned around and I saw the big cross, and it was gone in an instant, but so was he. I thought that was amazing. What's amazing is that I said, God, I'm totally lost. It's time for a miracle. And God hears you in that moment. I find that amazing. And I think a lot of women alone in a dark, shadowy tunnel might see a great big man of color and might not run up going, thank God you're here. So I thank God that there was no fear and that I understood completely that he had been put there to help me. So that's my New York angel. Anybody have a comment on that or anything you want to say about it?
No, I kind of had a similar experience in New York in a subway area, and I had an angel help me get back to my hotel. And it was at night. I had all these packages, and she went right with me. But so I called her my New York angel as well.
Yeah. I guess New York's just full of angels. I think the planet's full of angels.
Yes, I think so.
I think so. You don't think that's not really an uncommon story, then, is it?
Well, I think it is uncommon. I was like you. I was very scared, and I was all alone, and I was praying that I would get help too. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know that everyone has that experience, but some do. There's someone here that has something to say. Garrison, you may have to come up here too, but go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
We can't hear you at all.
Less common than it should be.
Okay, it's less common than it should be. Garrison commented.
I wonder too how many times things have happened like that, and the person that happened to calls it coincidence. I had good luck today. You know,
Yeah.
So
I think we do want to pass it off as not a miracle that it is, and we kind of tend to do that. But I think when we look back on things, we start to see, wow, that was an angel.
I really did know he was. I didn't know the
Felt it.
woman was. I didn't suspect that. And the angels that sang from the stars, I could very well deny that.
Right.
But I didn't know Grandpa was an angel.
That's right.
Let me tell you about Gladys Hargis. There's an event here they have in Topeka once a year. It's called Kansas 50 Greatest Writers. And I guess they run short because I always get invited. But I was participating this particular year, and when it lasts an entire day in the library, it's a really nice event. You're there with all your books and everything, and at the end of the day, you know, you have your little roll along that you brought your books in and your little dolly or whatever it is, and you pack up and you get ready to go. So I was packing up, and a man walked up to me, and I kind of saw him just before he arrived, and he was a little shorter than myself, and he had on a light brown three-piece suit and a tie. And my first thought was, I bet he's a minister or a missionary, because he had a little fringe of brown hair, brownish gray hair. But what I noticed about him, aside from being very, very immaculate, was the look in his eye was what I associate with a really good pastor or a really good missionary. He had blue eyes that were so clear, and such a gentle expression, a very sweet face. And I noticed that about him at a glance. And he said, "Are Esther Luttrell?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "My wife would love for you to have her book." And that's an awful thing to tell a writer, because people keep wanting to give us their books, and we have more books of other people's that we don't have. You know, there's no way you're going to read them all. And I really didn't want it, but I didn't want to hurt his feelings, because he was just a dear man, I could tell. And I said, "Thank you." And then he said, "My wife died and went to heaven, and she's not a writer, not a writer. She's a farm lady. But she wanted to tell this experience, and she wanted you to have this book." Now, that did get my attention. And I said, "Oh, thank you." And he said, "Our minister actually has given a sermon on her experience. And we've heard that people across the country, churches across the country, have actually given sermons based on her little book." Well, it really did. Here's the little book. This is the little book. It's called "You Live Forever," Gladys Hargis. Can you see that? You see the book? Okay. A very slender little book. Well, he gave it to me, and then he said, "Gladys will be at she's out in the rotunda. So if you have an opportunity to stop by her table before you leave, she'd love to meet you." Well, on the inside of that book, it says, "To Esther, God bless Gladys Hargis." And then he left. He said, "Thank you very much. I really appreciate you stopping by to say hello to her." And I said, "Nice to meet you." And he left. So by the time I got all my stuff together, everybody in the rotunda was gone. And so I didn't get to meet her. It's about 3 months later, and I'm sitting in my living room, and I was wishing I had something to read that I hadn't read. And there on the telephone table, which is hardly big enough to even hold a telephone, was this book, balanced, just sort of stuck in between a little piece of the table and the telephone itself. An odd place. Why would that book be there? And I thought, well, that's weird. Anyway, I picked it up and I started reading it. And true, she wasn't a writer, but that made it even more special, because it was a woman trying really hard to tell of the most wondrous experience anyone could imagine. She did die, she did go to heaven. So I'm reading it, but every page is full of errors that were made by the publisher, not her errors, publishing errors. When I got through, I realized that there was a single page that didn't have one of those errors on it. So I looked her up in the phone book and I called her and I thought she knew me. I said, "Hi, this is Esther Luttrell." She said, "Yes." No recognition. I said, "I just finished reading your book and it's wonderful. And I'm really concerned, though, that it has so many technical errors. May may I ask who published it? I mean, did you publish it?" She said, "Yes, I paid $6,000. Anyway, I said, "Would you be offended if I offer to edit it for you and republish it? And I won't charge you a penny, but I think it should be read." And she said, "Thank you." So she said, "Well, you want to come over and let's talk about it?" So she gave me her address. On my way over there, I thought to myself as I was ready to turn onto her street, "Gee, I hope her husband is there. What a sweet, sweet person. I'd love to see him again." So I pull in, and I'll cut the story short because I'm running long. But I ran in, I went in, and she was this great big farm lady, great big. I'm sure when she hugged him, she had him surrounded. She was so big, but she was so adorable. And we went through her book, and she's telling me about going to heaven and the things she didn't know how to write about that didn't get in the book. And if we had time, I would tell you that story, but I'm going to cut to the chase here. As she's telling me her story, she's explaining that the angel that took her to heaven was walking a little bit ahead of her, and she said to him, "Please, please let me go back. My husband's very, very ill, and he depends on me. He doesn't have anybody else. He depends on me. I don't mind coming here, but can I go back and just take care of him?" So the angel turned around. It was a male angel, turned around and looked at her, and he communicated. He didn't speak, but he communicated with her that he would have to confer. There were two other angels talking over by a wrought iron gate that led to the most beautiful, almost castle that she had ever seen. The gate was closed, but they were outside it talking. So he went over, and they were communicating, but she was looking at something else that, again, I won't get into that. It's an interesting story, but it's too long. So I'll just tell you the part that has to do with this angel. He came back and he said, "Yes, you may go back, but you are on borrowed time," which she thought was a strange thing for an angel to say, "You're on borrowed time." So she did wake up in her hospital bed, and she had literally been dead for 2 hours or more. I really forget, but it was a good substantial time. She'd been declared dead. So it was a real miracle that she came back to life. Anyway, as she's telling me this story, there's a shelf behind her, and it has a framed picture of a man. And the framed picture of the man is the one who handed me the book. But she's telling me that she came back and she took care of this husband until he died. So I'm thinking to myself, wow, this great big old farm lady, she got two great husbands. I can't even get one great husband. And she got two. What a miracle. How nice. So she's continuing to talk. And finally, I said to her, "So you've had two husbands?" And she said, "No, honey, I've only been married one time. Why?" And I said, "But you said he died." She said, "Yeah, 4 years ago." I said, "Well, that picture, is that not your husband?" She turned around and looked. She said, "Yeah, that's my husband." I said, "No, that's the man that gave me the book." And she said, "Oh, he did that again. He's done that before. He's taken care of me." I said, "He died 4 years ago." She said, "Oh, yeah." So,
Wow.
yeah. So out of all of the 50 authors there, why did that dear man come to me with this book? And the only thing I can think of is that I'm probably the only one silly enough to say, "Let me re-edit it for you and publish it for you, and I won't charge you a penny," which I did do. Maybe he knew that I would make that offer, and he wanted her book, to go out right.
Right.
And again, it's the husband taking care of his wife, not really a lot to do with me as far as an angel goes or attracting an angel, taking care of his wife. But I thought that was lovely. And I think about that so often because someone said to me, and I think I tell this story on Angelic Encounters on Sunday Stories, and Jack said, so an angel picked up, I mean, had a book. We always think of a spirit that, their hand would go right through it. So I think that's kind of interesting to consider that, yes, indeed, he handed me a book. I showed Gladys, I said, well, she said something about, I don't remember how it came up, but I said, Gladys, your husband brought me the book and said that you had signed it for me. She said, signed it, honey. I never heard of you till you called me today. I said, but look inside. And I showed her, to Esther, God bless Gladys Hargis. And she said, well, that's my writing, but I didn't write that.
Wow,
So I thought, God love angels.
that's miracle.
I think it's like Dean said to me, life and love are eternal, Mom. Nothing breaks that bond. And I think that we have my grandpa there, and now we have Gladys's husband, who say your loved ones are right there looking out for you. I really believe that. I really do. How are we doing on time? Is it time for me to?
Well, it's 4:20 now. You could, if there's any, you could ask for questions or comments. Anyone want to share?
But we can bypass it if we're
No.
running out of time.
No, we haven't, we need to start packing up at about 4:30. So go ahead. If you want to share a story, someone has a comment. Go ahead.
So
Sure.
recognize the difference between the angels that she has been describing, and then there's the angels that come from the Creator. Does she recognize that difference?
The question is, do you recognize that the people that have come to you are angels and they are different from the angels created by the Creator?
Well, I think we're all created by the Creator.
Okay.
I mean, it's not a Hallmark angel, the little cherub, with the angel wings, or the beautiful blonde lady with the angel wings that we see on cards. So, since I'm,
You're going to have to come up. Yeah,
go
she
ahead.
won't be able to hear you. I can try and transpose, but you saw how bad I did that. I know
Are you talking to me?
No, I'm talking to a gentleman that's asking a question, and he wants to clarify his question because I didn't say it quite right.
Oh, okay.
No, we're on the same page. We're all on the same page.
Okay. He's saying we're all on the same page,
I heard
and
that. Yes, thank you.
he's coming up.
I don't think I had a very good answer for you, honey, because the only conception that I have of an angel is what most of us have, and that's the popular one that's commercialized. We never see a Chinese angel or an American Indian angel, We see this little blonde, beautiful blonde angels.
Well, Esther,
Yeah.
I had the experience that I've encountered two types of angels. One type of angel is the same as what you're describing. Actually, this angel knew me. Two angels came to save me, and they were kind of fighting over who was going to take me to meet the Creator.
Oh,
But
yeah.
But the one knew me, and the one that knew me won out. She says, I know him. I know Jerry. So, and I didn't know anything. I was stunned. So I went with her. But then I've also had instances where there are angels that are very, very powerful and come from the Creator. And then while I am mentioning that, there are angels that are the bad angels that come from Satan.
I'm
And
sure.
those angels we try to recognize and stay away, such as yourself when you were a young girl. That was probably an influence from a bad angel.
Which one?
The instance when you were in the car.
And you were attacked by Charlie. He's
Yeah.
saying that Charlie may have been an angel from the other side,
Well, he was influenced
influenced by.
by a negative force.
He was, but this gets into a whole other conversation because I don't, talk like I know something. I don't know anything. I suspect a lot of stuff, but I
No,
don't really know anything.
the
But
experiences that we know, that's what we can share, and hopefully it helps other people get
that's
along.
that's my grand finale. That's what I was going to say.
But boy, it's been a pleasure listening to you, and
Oh,
you know, thank you for being here today.
well, thank you for staying awake every
Well,
day.
you got my attention.
I do tend to go on.
Thank you, Jerry.
Deb,
Yes, yes,
I realize you got 5 minutes until you want to get out of there.
right.
Can I just touch on one that I think is rather significant?
Sure, yeah.
I'll say it as quickly as I can. I was in an automobile accident, and I get through all that garbage and get on to when I was in rehab. And I thought I was just doing really great. I didn't even take any pain pills. I had a broken leg and had some operations, but I was doing really great. But I had inhaled the airbags. Two airbags broke, and they're full of debris. And I went, and I had inhaled it, and I had a horrible time every now and then breathing because of the debris that I had inhaled from that accident. So one day I was with my leg in a cast and all this mess. I was in such pain from breathing this junk in me. And I was leaning at the side of the bed, and out of my peripheral vision, I saw a young man. I could describe him so well, I could draw a picture of him even. He had a face like a peanut. He looked like a peanut head. And he had a real thin, frizzy, light brown hair. And he wore grandma glasses, the kind without rims. And the shirt, he had on a beige shirt with rectangle squares that had a little gold thread through it, and beige pants, and even a leather belt. I mean, it's my peripheral vision, but I was so aware of him. And I thought that he probably worked there at the rehab center. And but the door was in front of me, and over here was a wardrobe and windows. And I wondered how he got over there without my seeing him, even though I'm going, I still see. And I'm thinking, why is he staring at me? Why don't he do something? This is painful. He's just standing there looking perplexed. And I glanced at him, and he looked so confused. And again, I thought, well, number one, how'd you get over there? And number two, why aren't you doing something? I turned back around, and I looked back, and I was going to say, is there something we can do? But he was gone. He was gone. And I truly do realize what he was. I'm absolutely convinced he was an angel of death, and he had come to get me. And he was called back. No, never mind. No, never mind. And I think he was perplexed. I've sent here to get her. What? I'm leaving without her. And that's all I could think of was it wasn't my time. But I think I came very close. And so anyway, I just wanted to throw that in because that was different from anything I had ever experienced before. But I'm left with a firm impression that he was an angel of death. He's a nice one, like in Touched by an Angel, you know, he was a nice one. But I think he was just so confused. Anyway, I still say, you're talking about my age. And yeah, I am. I'm 89. I wasn't always 89. And there's no manual that tells you how to,
Be-
I don't even know how to dress the old lady. I do not understand being 89. But I think that I have to start paying attention to planning what I'm going to do.
Well, I think you're doing a wonderful job of being 89, and I hope we can all be as beautiful as you are, both outside and inside. You're a beautiful soul.
You're a sweetheart. And
And we really appreciate you sharing all these stories with us. I think what happens is maybe some of us have these occasions and these incidences, and we just dismiss them, whereas you've been able to process them, and maybe through the years you've realized, oh, those are angels. And because I know I've had a similar experience, but I dismissed it. I really did. I thought I was going crazy. I dismissed it as maybe being on the verge of a breakdown. When I had an angel at Walmart, no less. But anyway, I kind of dismissed that 25 years ago and said, oh, I was just losing it right then. But that woman was there, and I could describe her as well. And then the next thing, when she said something, and then I turned around and I started looking all over for her and couldn't find her. So I dismissed it until I've gotten involved in IANDS and listening to more people. And I'm thinking, well, I wasn't that crazy. I had this experience. So anyway, we thank you for the courage too to share. A lot of people don't want to share their stories because they think people are going to judge them.
oh, they
And
will. No, when they get to be 89, they're gonna say, "Oh,
you don't
boy."
care. You don't care anymore. You pull out the old lady card and you use that. I used to use
So it
the
doesn't matter if you believe it. You cannot believe the sky is blue, and that isn't going to make it purple. You
exactly.
don't have to believe it. True is true. True
Yeah.
is true.
It's your truth. It's your truth.
Doesn't matter a whit.
Well, I used to use the blonde card. Now I'm using the old lady card. So you just got to use what you got to use, right? But anyway, thank you so much for being
Thank
with
you.
us, and
Thank
stay warm. I know it's 9 degrees there, I guess.
you. Know
That's
that?
what the weather said.
I know I'm freezing in here because I've got the door shut and there's no ventilation, and I'm shivering.
Stay
But
in touch, and please, when you're not doing your Sunday stories, connect with us for IANDS, and we'd love to see you again.
oh, I'd love to come back again. I've got a billion stories.
Well, we feel like you're part of Florida because you lived here and we're living here,
That's my
and
home. I was born in Daytona Beach.
yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
And
so you are a Florida girl.
I
And so
left.
when you were describing the woods in Florida, we really got it. I think we
Yes.
all
Oh, but it's painful for me to come back because so many of those woods are gone, or I'll
yes,
see the big signs for sale, and I know they're going.
yes.
And you don't want to hear my whole big beef about
Yeah,
that.
well, all areas have changed, that's for sure. I lived in a little town outside of San Antonio, Bernie, and it only had 3,000 people at one time, and now it's got 30,000. So it's changed a lot. So
Well, now I
I
think
guess,
about Naples and Kissimmee. You know,
yeah,
those
all
Naples,
those areas.
Grandpa lived there in a trailer. I mean, there was nothing there.
That's right.
Orlando was nothing but shuffleboards and gardens.
Yeah.
It's just so different when I come back now. But
Well, thank you, Esther. We're gonna get out of here because the library closes right at 5. And
yes,
although I'd like to be locked in a library so I could read, but
isn't that true?
uh, we'll let you go and I'll stay in touch with you, okay?
Yes. Goodbye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you so much, Esther.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everyone, for being online today. And we're glad you're safe in your home, I hope. And now we have to get out in this weather and get home. But thank you so much, everyone, for being online. It's wonderful to see you.
Thank you
All right.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Nancy.